Hey everyone, I should be live on Facebook. It's still loading, but I know I should be live. So definitely tune in, let some people come in, and I'll plug in my headphone in the meantime. All right, so you should be good to go. We tag followers and do what needs to happen. Go, followers. All right, y'all. You should be good. So the topic of the live, I wanted to talk about like things that will not support any funding strategy, like the other thing that people don't focus on when they're trying to make sure they have a funding strategy, right? Because especially in this day and age, oh, let me make sure I record. I always forget to record. This Facebook is not, what's that called? YouTube keeps getting the short end of the stick. All right, yes. So like I said, we're going to talk about the one thing that leaders need to focus on when considering or even focusing on a funding strategy for a nonprofit organization or social enterprise. Because the thing that happens is that oftentimes they're so blinded by the one thing that you know you need that you don't focus on the other things that support the work that you're doing. And that's where I want us to come full front and center and realize that sometimes without this one thing, it can cause your whole funding strategy to collapse, right? So if you feel like you've been chasing funding, right, without the operational backbone to support it, I want us to talk a little bit more about what operational clarity is going to look like, and we'll go about it that way. But before I talk about that, I want to talk about the mindset around it. We're going to talk about how mindset is going to play a pivotal role in how you have the clarity necessary in your nonprofit organization for sustainable growth, and how you can truly impact your nonprofit. All right. So I'll give it a few seconds for people to come in while I send this reminder to my email list. But definitely, if you are live, if you're catching the live, hashtag live. And if you're catching the replay, hashtag replay. But definitely let me know you're here, because today I'm only live on Facebook and I'm recording on my phone. But hashtag live if you're watching the live, and hashtag replay if you're catching the replay. All right. So, hey everyone. If you are new here, my name is Stacy. I am your go-to operations architect for nonprofits and social impact enterprises. So if you have not been in my corner of social media yet, definitely stick around, because the one thing with me, I am definitely the one, when it comes down to it, I will give you the truth and keep you accountable and not sugarcoat things. And there is a time for us to cry, there is a time for us to get serious, and we'll talk about that in the DM. So today we're going to tackle a critical issue of why funding strategies usually collapse without operational clarity, because a lot of folks don't even understand that having the level of clarity and discipline and understanding of what their operations is supposed to look like makes it very difficult for their organization to actually function properly, right? So without operational clarity, I'll give a few examples for you to understand what operational clarity can actually do for your organizations, right? Without operational clarity, you have donations coming through so many platforms because you don't have a plan of which ones or systems or workflows to ensure that it's coming through a universal point and you're managing that properly, right? Your executive director is asking, has this donor been thanked yet? Because there's no clarity in how things work, how systems and operations are supposed to work, right? And nobody knows who's responsible. That's another example or another indicator that there is a lack of clarity when it comes to operations, right? Now, these are things that I want you to think about when thinking about operational clarity. Now, with operational clarity, I'll give you some examples, is that every donation that's triggered has an automatic acknowledgement email, right? There's a workflow with the donation process to ensure there is engagement and outreach done when someone donates, right? There's somebody responsible and that's tagged when a donation is made so that person can make a personal outreach, right? A staff member is actually assigned weekly reconciliation with different activities and things like that. And thank you letters are actually generated and mailed every Friday. So that is what it looks like to have some type of operational clarity, right? And the executive director is able to see a summary report every Monday because it's just generating, or it's part of your system and it does it automatically. And the result of having operational clarity is that donors usually feel more appreciated. Like when we're talking about donations specifically, they're able to feel appreciated, right? And your organization looks like it has its act together. So the level of clarity that exists within your organization is going to make a huge difference in how your stakeholders feel and how they interact with your organization. So again, that's the first thing I wanted to do, is provide you some examples of what operational clarity looks like. Now, one thing I want to make sure is that it's not just about systems and processes. It's also about the mindset, the leadership, and the courage to confront things that are uncomfortable in your organization. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes you have to be honest with yourself about what's working, what's not working, and what you need to change. And sometimes it starts with self. Sometimes it's looking at yourself as a leader and realize that you are the bottleneck of your organization and you need to change a few things. It's not just the systems, it's not just the processes, and those are things that you're going to have to evaluate and come to terms with. Okay. Now, a lot of people may believe that more funding will solve all the problems, but I'm sure everybody knows the saying and the song, more money, more problems, right? And that same thing comes with organizations that have a lack of clarity and they're all over the place, because the conundrum here is that the more money you get, the more you have to manage and more difficult it is to ensure that you're the money that you have and that you're managing is going to the right places and it's doing the right things. And then now that because then when you get more money, you want to increase your capacity. Now, what that entails most of the times is you're trying to hire staff. Now, to hire staff, what do you need to do? You need to put out applications. You need to interview these people. You need to find the right fit. So there's a lot that happens that a lot of people don't think about, right? You need to make sure there is a system for onboarding, right? You need to make sure that there is a system or your operation includes some type of process for onboarding and bringing new staff and how work is done. So more money does not fix every problem, okay? Unless you have the structure in place to do it, okay? So I want you to seriously think about that. More money does not fix the problems that your organization has. Oftentimes, it will exacerbate them and put them in the forefront, because that's when you realize, oh, we don't have this. Like, what is going on? Like, it makes it really difficult for you in many ways to actually progress, to actually do the things that you want to do. Because then now, especially if it was funding that you receive via a grant and you have deliverables that you need to meet, it makes it difficult for you because you're not able to deliver these assets or deliver these things in a timely manner, because you're here trying to figure out how to do it efficiently and in a way that you do it well. So that's the one thing I have to say about that. Sometimes more funding does not fix all the problems. And without the infrastructure or systems and operations to support it, it makes it more difficult and it will amplify existing issues. Now, I worked with a nonprofit that secured about $90,000 last year in new funding. They did not have the proper systems. Now, that's one thing I want to make clear. They did not have the proper system. They had no standard operating procedures, no process on how onboarding would work. And when people were checking out items for the nonprofit, there was no system for it. So they were losing money because staff would lose it, and they didn't care if they lost it. They wouldn't report that they lost it. It was a whole mess, right? There was misallocated resources and unmet objectives because of this lack of systems and this lack of clarity among everybody on the team. All right. And what was happening there, it's like, yes, you got the new funding, but also other issues started popping up because the new funding enabled you to get more things to do the work, but it also showed gaps that existed within the organization where you were they were bleeding money because they did not have those systems in place, right? So the funding exposed the cracks of that organization specifically in their operation, and it did not fill these gaps because that's not what the funding was for. Okay. Now, operational clarity is about having clear processes, defined roles, and effective communication channels. Now, funding is not going to fix that. And that's why I say that people do not look at that aspect when they're working on a funding strategy. You need the operational clarity to support the funding you're trying to get. Because if you don't have any sort of clear processes in place, or clear systems in place, or a clear infrastructure or structure in place for your organization to support the money it's receiving and the money it's managing, it makes it very difficult for staff and the leaders alike to do the work and actually help accomplish the mission. Okay, so these are things I want you to think about, because without it, what happens is that you start facing decision paralysis. You start seeing people making duplicated efforts on a lot of activities because nobody knows what's going on, and there's no process in place. There's no way of tracking it. A lot of things happen when there's a lack of operational clarity. Okay, now things I want you to consider. Now, I know there's a lot of data out there on how nonprofit work is happening, but Salesforce Nonprofit Trends, they reported that 50% of nonprofit leaders, they actually say that lack of integrated systems is a growth barrier for them. Now, integrated system, I want you to really think about that. Now, the systems they have in place, they don't have enough systems in place to ensure that they're actually growing strategically, right? And that's one thing I really want you to start thinking about. Do you have a plan on how systems are going to be integrated in your organization to ensure that you are going in the direction of growth and not just doing work with no end? It's very difficult looking at nonprofit organizations that have no ideal or no vision, or maybe they have a vision that they came up with, but no actual substance, where they don't understand that to get to that vision, you need a plan, you need a strategic plan, and you need an operational plan. Now, you need the strategic plan because you need to make sure that you know what that vision is and what the goals are and what the action plans are. But the operational plan, what you need with that is to ensure that your organization, with its infrastructure and understanding its capacity and understanding the gaps that exist, it has a plan to operate and accomplish the strategic plan in a way that makes sense. Now, I know that's one thing I'm working with one of my clients, is a strategic plan to help craft an operational plan. So these are very important things for your nonprofit organization to start thinking about, is how to ensure that you have the operational clarity to support your funding strategy. Now, I know it's not just the funding strategy, it's the overall organization strategy, but that's what I'm talking about today, is just funding strategy. But I really want you to start thinking about that. Now, if your organization is in a place where it cannot, or it's not ready for a full-blown strategic plan, now one thing that I do, they're called precision strategy sessions. Now they are 90-minute strategy sessions where I sit down with you, identify gaps that exist within your nonprofit organization, and we work on setting your goals for the next 6 to 12 months, and we work on an action plan for your organization to start implementing to get to those goals. So the strategy session is the link is going to be in the comments. The strategy session is $597, and it's a great way for you to work with me and set an action plan for yourself. Now, the strategic planning engagement, which is a long-term engagement with my clients, is about $12,000 in a span of 6 months. So I want you to take advantage of the precision strategy session to get started on the work that's needed to get your organization to the next level. Now, the strategy session link is on my Beacon storefront, and I'm going to also put it in the comments in the Facebook Live. So I want you to go on that link and book a strategy session, because with that in mind, you can start looking at an action plan and start implementing things that make sense. Because if your organization is just going day by day and not really focusing on activities that make sense, it's going to be very difficult for your organization to actually make a dent in the vision is trying to accomplish. Okay, so that's the one thing I have with that specifically, especially trying to accomplish operational clarity. So definitely book your strategy session and we'll get to work. Now, the other thing I will say is that you need to start thinking about whether or not your operations are streamlined to support your funding goals, right? Because then if your funding goal is to increase donor engagement, donations, and things like that, do you even have systems in place to support donations? Do you even have a software? Do you have a workflow in place? Do your operations support your funding goals, right? Can it support multiple donations in one day? Do you even have that set up? Okay, so those are things I want you to start thinking about. And then also I shared recently that a post on Facebook, and I will repeat this. When I tell you need to mind your business, I'm not playing. You need to start focusing on those actionable steps rather than being emotionally captive. Because at the end of the day, minding your business, what it looks like is you being able to realize and come to terms with, okay, our operations are lacking, our systems are lacking, and we need to get it together. So I need you to start minding your business and start focusing on the things that will help you accomplish your mission and vision. Because especially nonprofits and social enterprises, it's very easy to look at the news and see the bad things that are happening, but also staying emotionally captive to those things because they are happening in the present, right? But then if you keep focusing your efforts on complaining about what's happening rather than focusing on your mission, which is to help a different subset of the community that actually needs your help, by the time these problems no longer exist, another problem is going to take root and going to pop up in your face, and you still haven't reached your mission. So I really mean it when I say mind your business. Okay, however you can advocate, sure. But also you got to be about business. Okay, you have to stand 10 toes on business and do the work that you're supposed to do, because just complaining about it is not going to work. Just saying that you're going to boycott or just go in front and picket, okay, but what are you doing to support the mission? Because a lot of nonprofits have amazing goals, like amazing missions, because then some nonprofits want to support, their goal is to support the housing crisis, right? The unhoused, and they do advocacy and stuff like that. But the thing that happens, if your goal is to provide housing to these individuals, why are you not working on building relationships with developers and actually trying to get donations and sponsors so you can actually buy a property and do that and support the unhoused population? You're so not focused on the things that actually make a difference. You're focused on the things you can't change, that you're not doing the work that matters. Okay, so this is what I want you to sit down and think about. What can you actually do, or what matters in this case, to ensure that you're able to support the people that you say you serve? Okay, because you do not want to get caught in a cycle of frustration without taking steps to change your reality. I'm going to repeat that. You do not want to get caught in a cycle of frustration without taking the steps to change your reality and the reality of your team and the people that you serve. Okay, so I'm going to need you to shift from reactive to proactive, because there's too many things happening right now that are taking you away from the work you're supposed to be doing and putting you in a place where it seems that's what you want to, that you need to do, because everybody's doing it. Everybody's saying you need to do it. But is that where you need to be right now? Is that how you can be the best version of yourself to serve the people you say you serve? Because the hard work, right? You can't be distracted from doing the hard work, the work that you're meant to do, because somebody else is trying to disturb your peace. Because oftentimes we have to see the things that are happening as just that. They are meant as a distraction to distract you from the things that you were supposed to be doing. Okay, your mission is going to depend on you actually like stabilizing and regulating yourself to realize that you do not need to follow the trends to be successful and help the people in your community that need your help. You need to focus and mind your business. Okay, so I've been telling myself since 2024, I need to mind my business, and I stand on it. When you mind your business, wonderful things happen for you and the people that you love and the people that you serve. It does not mean that you lack empathy. It means that you are able to not react in a way that is not emotional. One of my colleagues, who said that? Was it? I don't think it was Allison. One of the colleagues, Allison Sharp, she said yesterday that one thing that helps her not react emotionally is giving her emotions to God. Because one thing I loved when she said that, because you can't control anything. Let go and let God. Like, I'm sure everybody's heard that before. Let go and let God. Because at this point, there are certain things you cannot control. And the fact that I don't think people lie to themselves. I think people know that, right? That they can't control everything. But you need to realize that just standing on your soapbox and saying this is not okay, what are you doing about it? Unless you're doing something about it, talk about what you're doing. Don't talk about the problem. We all know what the problem is. Talk about what you're doing. And talk about what you can do, what you want to do, and encourage people to take action. Like, as a leader, that's what you need to start doing, and that's what I'm encouraging you to do, because it makes more of a difference when we come from a place of solutions thinking and start thinking about ways to solve a problem rather than looking for validation and complaining. I don't think you ever heard of birds of a feather flock together? Everybody knows that. Like, I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not looking for people to support the struggle, because I do not choose to struggle. I'm not choosing it, and I'm not going to choose to be in circles where people want to talk about that. I want to be in circles, or I want you to also acknowledge that you put yourself in the positions that you want to be in. If disempowered leaders cannot empower people. If you ever shared that your goal and your mission was to empower the people you serve, you have to come from a place where you are empowering them and talking life into them and speaking positivity into anything that is happening, because right now nobody needs to be reminded that, or they need to know it's happening, yes, right? But you don't need to beat it with a stick over and over again, because at that time it becomes somebody's reality. And that's not what we're doing. Like, yes, these things are happening. This is what we can do. This is what we need to do differently. And this is how we need to move. Okay. So, and definitely book a precision strategy session with me. Now, I am looking forward to seeing you on my calendar so we can talk a little bit more about that and how your nonprofit can move to the next level within the next year, because it will have to be a very strategic approach, especially in the times to come, to ensure that your nonprofit is able to circumvent a lot of the things that are happening. So definitely check the link in the comments or in my bio and book a precision strategy session. Now, I have another announcement coming soon, but definitely do that, and then let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like for your organization, and then we'll go from there. But have a good one. Bye, y'all.